The man who walked onto the stage at the 2026 César Awards in Paris didn't just look different, he felt like a stranger. For decades, Jim Carrey's face has been his calling card, a rubberized landscape of emotion that we've known since the 90s. But in February 2026, the legend appeared nearly unrecognizable. It wasn't just the aging process or a new haircut. Fans watching the high-definition feeds began to notice a biological impossibility. Jim Carrey has had deep brown eyes his entire life, yet in Paris, they were a distinct, piercing light green. Even more shocking was the speech. Jim delivered a perfectly articulated acceptance speech in fluent French, a skill he has never publicly possessed or even hinted at in his 40-year career. The internet immediately went into a tailspin, but as the clone rumors began to trend, a convenient explanation appeared. A prosthetic artist named Alexis Stone posted a photo of a hyper-realistic Jim Carrey mask, claiming the entire appearance was a performance art piece. But the math doesn't add up. The producers of the show and Jim's own publicist immediately doubled back, insisting that it was the real star. This creates a terrifying paradox. Either a master of disguise can fool a live audience and a world-class award show, or the industry is using cover-ups to explain away a replacement that isn't quite a perfect match. Chapter 2: The Bitcoin Geneticist. If you think the idea of a cloned celebrity is too far-fetched, you haven't been reading the newly unsealed documents from the Epstein Files. In early 2026, a new set of emails surfaced between Jeffrey Epstein and a man named Bryan Bishop. Bishop isn't just a random contact, he's a prominent transhumanist and Bitcoin investor who was caught on record pitching a designer baby startup to the elite. In these emails, Bishop discusses moving out of the self-funded garage biology phase into the first live birth of a designer baby. Epstein's response was chilling. He didn't have a problem investing, he just didn't want it to look like he was leading the project. This suggests that the technology for genetic replication and biological engineering wasn't just a hobby for the world's most powerful people, it was an infrastructure. Joe Rogan recently hammered this point home, suggesting that the science of lengthening telomeres and human cloning is far more advanced than the public is allowed to know. Rogan's theory is simple. If they're telling you clones don't exist, the guy telling you is likely one of them. Chapter 3: The 2017 Awakening. To understand why Jim Carrey would be a candidate for this kind of replacement, you have to look at the moment he became a liability. In 2017, Jim had a public awakening that sent shockwaves through Hollywood. He famously walked onto a red carpet at New York Fashion Week and told the reporter that there is no Jim Carrey and the entire event was a meaningless dream. He began speaking out against the masks we all wear and hinted at the deep, dark layers of the entertainment industry. When a superstar with that much influence starts telling the public that their world is an illusion, the system usually responds in one of two ways: they silence them or they reset them. Shortly after these outbursts, Jim retreated from the spotlight, only to re-emerge years later as a much more calm, much more compliant version of himself. He even started joking about using decoys and doubles to go to Starbucks, making the idea of a Jim Carrey double sound like a fun celebrity quirk. But when you look at the 2026 César Awards footage, the joke doesn't feel funny anymore. It feels like a confession hidden in plain sight. In early March 2026, just days after the César Awards footage went viral, a high-level distraction was deployed. A legendary prosthetic artist named Alexis Stone posted a behind-the-scenes photo of a Jim Carrey mask, claiming the entire Paris appearance was her in disguise. It seemed like the perfect debunking, until people actually watched the video. Jim didn't just stand there, he gave a 10-minute emotionally complex speech in fluent French, moving his facial muscles in ways that are biologically impossible through a silicone mask. Even more suspicious was the response from the award show officials. Gregory Collier, the general delegate of the César Awards, immediately, unequivocally confirmed that it was the real Jim Carrey and that he had been practicing his French for months. This leaves us with two terrifying possibilities. Either the industry is using master makeup artists to gaslight the public whenever a glitch occurs, or the version of Jim we saw in Paris is the product of something far more advanced than a mask. Chapter 5: The Designer Baby Memos. If you think the word clone is just a conspiracy buzzword, look at the Epstein Files released in February 2026. One specific email thread involves a man named Bryan Bishop, a tech investor and geneticist, who was caught on record pitching a designer baby startup to the elite. In these emails, Bishop discusses moving out of the self-funded garage biology phase into the first live birth of a designer baby. Epstein's response was chilling. He didn't have a problem investing, he just didn't want it to look like he was leading the project. This suggests that the technology for genetic replication and biological engineering wasn't just a hobby for the world's most powerful people, it was an infrastructure. Joe Rogan recently hammered this point home, suggesting that the science of lengthening telomeres and human cloning is far more advanced than the public is allowed to know. Rogan's theory is simple: if they're telling you clones don't exist, the guy telling you is likely one of them. Chapter 6: The White Clone Warning. Jim Carrey isn't the only star whose public replacement has been caught on camera. Jamie Foxx, who vanished into a mysterious hospital stay in 2023, returned to the spotlight looking and acting like a different man. During a public appearance, Fox even made a joke that felt more like a warning. He told the crowd that people were saying he was a clone, and then vividly described seeing a white version of himself walk into his hospital room. The crowd laughed, but the details were too specific. Fox pointed out that even his signature head tattoo had mysteriously vanished after his recovery. We see the same pattern with the Avril Lavigne-Melissa theory. A celebrity becomes mentally unstable or uncooperative, they disappear into a medical facility, and return with different physical markers, different handwriting, and a sudden willingness to play by Hollywood's rules. Chapter 7: The Magician's Secret. The final piece of the 2026 puzzle is the revelation of Jeffrey Epstein's strange obsession with magicians. Newly released FBI memos from April 2026 reveal a very close relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and world-class illusionists like David Blaine and David Copperfield. Why would a billionaire, pedophile, and transhumanist need magicians? Because their entire career is based on the art of the substitution. If you want to replace a person in plain sight, you don't just need a clone, you need an expert in misdirection. These documents show that Blaine was even filming stunts inside Epstein's New York townhouse, using the billionaire's resources to perfect the art of making people believe they are seeing one thing when they are actually seeing another. If the world's greatest magicians were in Epstein's pocket, then the Jim Carrey we see today might just be the greatest magic trick ever performed.